then he's gone to 2 other homes since then. But those weren't adoptive homes. We knew they weren't adoptive. In the beginning, when he was little, I would say, do we want to, we're trying to get you adopted, and he wanted to be adopted. And then by the time he was like 16, I said, let's find you an adoptive home. And I wanted to put him on the Adoption Exchange. So that's a website online where families can go and find kids who are waiting for families. And he said, no way. He said, I'm done with adoption, Rachel. I'm done with a family. I'm just going to work on taking care of myself. But we know that kids don't thrive in that environment. Like, kids don't thrive if they're taking care of themselves. So when he turned 18, though, because he was 18 and he felt like an adult and that a family wouldn't have all this say over him, then he decided to let me put him on the exchange. So even though he's 18, he's still in foster care, and he's on the Adoption Exchange. But he's living in his own apartment. We're helping him pay for that right now. He has a job. So we're trying to make sure he's able to, like, function in society, and succeed. But I'm still worried that he doesn't have a family, because he called me on Saturday, and he's like, I have no food, and I don't have a ride to the store. And I'm the one he calls, because I'm his caseworker, and he doesn't have a mom to call, right, and ask for that. So
do you guys help him with bills or something?
we help him with his rent, and then his job takes care of, with his money he gets from his job, he pays for his phone and his food. But do you think he's really good about that, about saving his money for food for like the whole 2 weeks? So if he has this much money that he has to make last for 2 weeks, do you think he's good with that when he's 18 and he hasn't had a family to teach him and he hasn't had stability in his life? No. So he ends up living on rice for about the last 5 days.
Ooh, sounds fun.
Yeah. Sounds like college. I know, it's true. It's like ramen and rice, and that's what he lives on. I take him shopping every now and then, and I'm like, let's get you some peanut butter and some bread and some fruit and some variety here. But I can't do that. Like, as a social worker, I probably shouldn't even tell you guys that, because as a social worker, you have to have good boundaries. You can't become the mom of this child, right? Like, I can't do that. That's not my role. But of course, I have this relationship with him that I've had for so many years. So I help take care of him, when he needs it. But I also need to say, you need to learn how to balance your money, bud, and you need to make it last. Because he's taking his friends out to dinner when he gets his paycheck, and then spends all that money at a restaurant, and then he doesn't have enough for the restaurant. Yeah.
If somebody like this, like, if they didn't have, like, is there any time where they, like, wouldn't have a home, like, in between homes? Like, where would they stay?
Yeah, that's a good question too. We have a lot of shelter homes. They're called shelter homes, where they're just temporary while we find a more permanent placement. Or we have 2 shelter facilities. One is the Family Support and Treatment Center here in Orem, and they take kids 0 to 11, and they can even spend the night there for like 3 nights, or when it's a shelter placement, they can stay there longer. Or for kids who are 12 to 18, we have Vantage Point in Provo. It's called Vantage Point, and they can go there and stay. And it's kind of like, let's see, what's a good example? It's just like, almost like a dorm, like there's just a hall with a few bedrooms and beds, and it's not homey, and then the kitchen is sort of like in a room like this, and everybody kind of has a chore chart of what they're doing. It's not a home at all. You don't have a mom and dad. You have college students who are coming in for their shifts, so you're always with a different adult, and anyway, those are what shelter placements are like. Yeah.
They go to school?
Not while they're there at Vantage Point or at the Family Support and Treatment Center. They miss school. And that's stressful. How do you guys think that these kids do in school overall? Are they doing really well and getting straight A's? No. And so they're stressed out, and school makes them feel dumb and stressed, because what are their brains spending most of the time on?
Surviving.
Exactly. So they don't have time and space in their minds to worry about this paper that's due on the 25th. Like, they're for sure not going to hand in this paper if they're in this class. They're going to be like, too stressful. Unless we have them in a pretty stable foster home and things are going pretty well, you know, then they do well in school for a while, and then they move again, and what happens, they go to a different school, a different city. It's very stressful, yeah,
Is this a very needed job?
very. And this is a job you will never not have a job. There's never gonna be a time when they're like, oh man, no need for social work. Like everybody's out of a job, like you'll always have a job in social work. Which is sad, but true. And again, you can either with social work, you guys, you can either work with individuals if you really like that more, or you can work with communities. Like you could be like trying to bring a great resource into your community, like maybe a shelter home, a better shelter home or something. You know, so you can do things in the community, or you could do things with a certain population. If you guys notice that there's an underprivileged group of people, like an underprivileged culture, then you could start an organization. You know, you can do anything with a social work degree if you're interested in this kind of stuff. What else? Yeah.
What do you do on a typical day?
Well, what I do on a typical day nowadays is boring because I'm in like management or not like management. So because when you're a supervisor, you kind of stop working with families as much. You're supervising workers who are working with families. So I go to a lot of meetings. That's what I do on a typical day. But before I was a supervisor, a typical day would be probably working with 3 or 4 families pretty intensely in a day, trying to help them get connected to services. A lot of your job as a social worker, you guys, is to listen. To listen without judgment and just kind of hear people talk about